Muren, on a eu Phil Tippett, on a eu John Knoll, et il nous manquait quand même encore une personne de cette envergure. Donc vous le connaissez forcément pour Titanic, pour Avatar, pour Harry Potter, pour Apollo 13. Donc sans plus attendre, je vous demande d'accueillir chaleureusement Rob Legato. Okay, we're not going to do this chronologically because there's actually, you said that you had a short career backstage, but not that short. And we don't have 6 hours. So maybe we can start with Harry Potter. I know that's not your favorite memory in terms of
no, it's not my favorite
visual
memory.
effects.
But thanks for bringing it up. It's an old wound that you've now ripped the scar off.
Exactly. Let's start with this and let's move on. Actually, you're not a fantasy guy or a science fiction guy.
Correct.
So how did you arrive on Harry Potter?
I arrived on Harry Potter because I did Titanic, and that was kind of a big deal. It's the ship that went down, so it was a big deal, and I got awarded for it. And so they needed somebody who was, seemingly fluent in visual effects, and so they hired me. And I didn't really want to do the job, so I kept on asking for more money and more things so they could say no, and they kept on saying yes, and so I was stuck doing Harry Potter when I should not have.
Well, but at least you had a lot of money to do it. You actually worked with many different techniques in your movies, and you use very old school techniques like maquettes and real pyrotechnic effects, etc. And you use really high-tech CGI also, and you mix those elements. That's really one thing that is specific of your work.
Well, some of my best ideas are going into the past, seeing how other people did it, and marvel in the genius of things that were done when they had fewer tools than we had, and the illusion was total and timeless because it wasn't based on technology that a couple years later you'd see the shot and it would be kind of so-so. So I would try to do whatever I could do in camera as much as possible, and photographing models was something that was easy to do because I could light it the way I like it and all that. So I would always start with the very simplest solution and end up with the most complicated if the simple solutions couldn't fix the shot.
There's a lot of huge miniatures in Harry Potter. Hogwarts was.
You still want to talk about Harry Potter?
Yeah, let's finish with this, and then we're gonna do to one of your other favorite projects.
The ones I like, perhaps.
No, you use the miniatures for Hogwarts, and there's also really nice tricks with the stairs and the paintings.
Yeah, the fun part, the only fun part was doing the paintings, bringing that to life, and had an artist come in and paint it, and I forget what it's called, like a varnish, and then would crack the blue screen paint, and then I would add the painting to it. It had the texture of a real painting, and I sort of liked that subtlety, that it looked not like quite a visual effect gag. It looked like it was integral to the physical texture of the painting, and it was very simple. I always like simple things, and the staircase and things like that. That was sort of fun to figure out how to do it and make it as nice as you could.
So you're not a fantasy guy, you're not a science fiction guy, but I'm going to talk about a science fiction project. Star Trek: The Next Generation in the late 1980s. That was your first big work as a visual effects supervisor. I have some footage that was actually done by ILM, but that you played with. So we can talk about this, actually. They made a huge miniature of the ship. Maybe we can dim the light a little, so that peut-être qu'on peut baisser un peu la lumière pour que les gens puissent mieux voir. So that was a huge miniature.
Yeah.
Maybe too big.
You sure that was ILM who did that or not?
Yeah.
It looks like something I did, but.
Oh, maybe that's you.
It could be me. Yeah, because they didn't do that ship.
So,
I think it's me.
okay, that's you. Perfect. I wasn't sure. So.
Yeah, no, it is definitely me because we used a fluorescent orange screen to pull the mats for it. Now that's from the old show.
Yeah.
That's different.
This actually, you didn't use CG ships. You couldn't have, considering what we see there. So you used a huge miniature. How big was it?
It was 6 feet, and it was huge, and it didn't have a lot of surface detail, and it was very ungainly to work with. And ILM had these big giant wires, like these wires sticking out of it, and you have to hand plug them into the transformers. It was very cumbersome, and eventually I changed that model to a smaller 3-foot model that had more surface detail on it and easier for me to shoot. I got to the point where I could shoot, ILM would take a week to do a shot, and I could do 7 shots in a day. Because I made it much more concise and easier to light, didn't have this big wire bundle out. We had an automatic transformer, and so we figured out ways to get as much production value in a TV show as we could.
How long did you work on Star Trek overall?
It seemed like forever, but it was 5 years, actually.
5 years. And what were the big lessons that you learned? Because it was for TV, you didn't have a huge budget.
Well, a couple of lessons. One of them was that I would try something because even if I failed, it would still be okay enough for TV. And I would try new lighting setups and more interesting ways of shooting something. And I learned early on that if instead of doing a wide shot, if I shot close-ups and things, the sound people can actually key on that. So it made the effect seem better because there was a better sound quality to it. Because it was a close-up. Because if you're very far away from the ship, all the noises kind of congeal together. And if you're close-up, you can key on the engines or the other little things that were going on. So I tended to, that's where you're starting the filmmaking process, where if you work in a sequence instead of a shot, you can get a lot more value out of it and make it more interesting lit and all the various things. So I learned that a lot. I learned never to storyboard, ever. That if I storyboarded it and then someone looked at it, they might have an opinion on it. And so if I don't storyboard and I don't show anybody anything, then I can just go shoot whatever I wanted to do.
It's all about control.
Yes, it was definitely. So I learned that early on, and it worked pretty well. Yeah, I did all these. I remember that.
So after the Next Generation, you did Deep Space Nine. We are not going to linger on this.
You're trying to torture me.
Okay, fantasy science fiction is out of the of the way. We can talk about what happened. In 1993. There was a small film called Jurassic Park that happened in 1993, and Jurassic Park was supposed to be made in the beginning with stop motion and animatronics and a few CGI shots for the Gallimimus that are running on the field. And actually, we all know that it was replaced by CGI dinosaurs, and there were still animatronics by Stan Winston, but Stan Winston was angry because everyone in the press was talking about the CGI and not about his actually really innovative work and his team. So what Stan Winston did, he talked with James Cameron and a guy called Scott Ross. And Winston invested in digital technology, and the three of them created a company in '93 called Digital Domain. And Digital Domain, you were one of the very first visual effects supervisors.
Third hire for Digital Domain.
And your first project, so while John Bruno was working on a small film called True Lies, you worked on The Interview with a Vampire. Maybe we can talk a little about that project.
Well, I don't mind talking about that.
That's a great
film. That was
film.
my first trip to Paris, by the way, and I adored it. And I had the greatest time doing it because it was something more akin to what I like to do. It was photographing drama and finding clever ways of filming something to get a mood and a tone. Worked with the great Philippe Rousselot and try to match into his beautiful photography. And it was kind of the thing that I really liked doing, and so it was a great project for me, and I just and I got to shoot a lot of the second unit, all the fire scenes, and had a great time with Neil Jordan, the director. And I liked the idea that the director and I could just walk slightly off the stage, decide what we wanted to do, and then just go do it. No committee, no have to clear it with anybody, just create because it felt like that was the right thing to do, use all your intuition. So it was so much fun to work on. I loved it.
What's funny is, Digital Domain did the visual effects, and Stan Winston did the makeup effects
Yes.
because he was really involved in this.
You just ask him, yes, he did.
And there is a shot where Tom Cruise gets his cutthroat, and we have a morphing between the real Tom Cruise and an animatronic version of Tom Cruise, and it's incredibly subtle. Maybe too subtle for Stan.
It was definitely too subtle. I mean, I liked the idea that you couldn't see the seam, and that at the beginning of the shot was one thing, at the end of the shot was something else, and you didn't see how it happened all the way through. And I used that technique for Titanic as well. But it was too subtle for Stan because he wanted people to notice his work. And I was purposely making it invisible, where you couldn't tell that we did what we did. And he was not too terribly happy about it. I was happy about it, but he wasn't happy about it.
It's a great shot, and it really, ages really
and he
well.
used the motion base was used on Jurassic Park, and they serviced it to use for Tom Cruise.
Recycling all the time in special
That's
effects.
the only money we saved, I think, just using that same rig again.
We're going to watch a short clip, and we're going to talk about this after that.
I like that movie. Now there's a story behind every one of these shots.
Fuel pump. This is it. A few bumps and we're hauling the mail.
We are go for launch. T-minus
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
That blew many minds at the time.
Yeah, thank you. That was my second movie.
Second movie and second experience at Digital Domain. What's interesting in your career is that you are a filmmaker. You have a sense of timing and editing and storytelling and narrative, etc. And actually, Ron Howard gave you real creative freedom with this. Can you explain how you worked on the mise en scène with him?
Well, they originally had storyboards for this scene that was all based on stock footage, and I'm not a big storyboard fan because I like to create the shot based on the moment in the movie, and I need all the input to create it. And somebody hand draws something long before they have all the input, it just seems to be very dry, and I don't really do very well copying somebody's work. And it's not very much fun to do. So, and then Ron Howard told me something that was very instrumental in my career actually, is so we got the storyboards that I was going to ignore anyway, and then he said, well, what if Martin Scorsese shot the launch? What would it look like? And so I went and I studied all the Martin Scorsese films to kind of come up with, to glean something that I could use. And what it made me do is come up with an unusual, different slant on it. And I discovered in a movie called Color of Money, it was about a pool player, Tom Cruise, playing pool, and he shot in a very inventive way the pool table, and I discovered that what he did was he repeated an insert with like 3 or 4 or 6 frames maybe, and it was a repeat action, but because of the clever way he and Thelma Schoonmaker cut it, you didn't see the repeat, you just saw an impact cut. So when you see here and you see the engines igniting, I took that information and I shot the shots and then I edited it, and there was exactly 1 frame difference between looking like a repeat or looking like it has impact, and Ron Howard liked it, and then I decided that I would put all of these shots to heroic music to get this rousing sensation of it, because that's kind of what it wanted to be, the big moment, or what you think is the big moment in the film until the tragedy happens. But at any rate, so I did that, and what was nice about working with Ron Howard and his editors is that I was able to cut the scene myself, add my music to it, which was heroic music, to get a rhythm, and they used it intact. They took the whole footage and they just cut in the actresses, but everything else was timed the same. And then Jamie Horner, I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to give them my music, because then it was really doing too much. So I gave it to him silent, but Jamie Horner found the rhythm of what I did with the music, and he made, you know, a magnificent score. And a lot of the stuff which I learned from Star Trek is when you shoot these close-ups and inserts, the sound effects and the music cues and the rhythm really makes it, it's not like even impressive as a shot, but as a sequence it becomes more impressive, because some of the shots are very simplistic and very easy to do, but it's the rhythm of it and the fact that the other artists could take advantage of it by composing music to the rhythm of the edit. And I was very moved when I first heard Jamie Horner's music, because things seldom come out better than you hoped they would. You just, I mean, and when I was doing this, I just didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to be the lowest common denominator that I was. That the movie's great, Tom Hanks is great, everybody's great, and I do crappy work. So I was just nervous that I was trying to come up with something that fit the heroic nature of this event. So it was a big turning point in my career of the freedom to explore the filmmaking of it, not the visual effect of it. You know,
yeah, it's ironic that the reference was Martin Scorsese, knowing that, well.
And Marty said I would never shoot anything like that. So,
so bad studying. I have a few photos from the miniatures, from the miniature work that we can comment. So there's a lot of in-camera action, actually, which is
and some of it, this was out in the parking lot, and we used this, actually the interesting thing was use the same cameras, they're photosonic cameras, they used to actually photograph the real launch. I needed them to shoot this in slow motion to look like it was the proper speed, because they're miniature, you have to shoot miniatures in slow motion to make it look to scale. So it was interesting, the same cameras that were used to film the real launch is used to make you believe the miniature.
So what's digital?
What's that?
What is digital in this?
Almost nothing here. There were fire extinguishers, and in one of the shots where we go straight down and you see the gantry arms opening up, the wax or the ice was digital, and the close-up shots I did in camera, and that was real wax that we used. So that was a total in-camera shot, and so I was doing as much photography. They tried to do some CG work that I didn't care for. Even the part where, I don't know if you remember in the movie, they go to the bathroom and it sprays outside, and they working on it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Particle system, which is very crude at the time, and I hated it. And I used an Evian spray bottle. I think it's French, isn't it? Evian spray bottle, and I went on the stage and I backlit it, and I used that, and so it's Evian spray coming out. We tinted it yellow to look like the the guys going to the bathroom and spraying it out in the thing. But didn't even use it for, I didn't even use CG for that. I used a cheap.
You had to import. Trick. You had to import the Evian bottle, so maybe it was the most expensive shot in the film. You worked with Joe Viscosil on the
Joe Viscosil,
who actually blew up the Death Star. That's his big,
and he I think he did the White House blowing up as well for Independence Day.
Independence Day. So he handled all the.
Yeah, all the miniature stuff, all the explosions, they were all in camera, and there was fire extinguishers for the exhaust. I mean, it was like all cheap tricks, but they seemed to work.
Doesn't look cheap.
That was in the parking lot of Digital Domain.
There's a funny story that you actually built a very big, very heavy module for when the re-entry, they do the re-entry, and you dropped it from a helicopter?
Yes. Yeah, that was... Well, the Digital Domain at the time wanted to be known as a digital computer company. That's what they were selling. And when I first read the script, and I thought, oh, the easiest thing for me to do is get a capsule, put parachutes on, and throw it out of a helicopter, and I'll photograph it, and it hits the water, and that'll be that. And then they tried to talk me out of it. And so they had the full court press of all of the CG artists, and to say that they wanted to do that shot as a CG shot, and I said no, I think it won't look very good. And then they showed me a scene from Outbreak. I don't know if you remember that movie, but Outbreak, where they did
Virus en français.
And they did a CG parachute in a box that they dropped out of a plane, and they were very proud of themselves, and they got everybody like this in a screening room to show me that shot. And they showed me the shot, and I said, well, that's horrible. I said, is that to prove that I'm correct, that I should just throw it out of a helicopter and shoot it and call it a day? And they said, no, we wanted to impress you. I said, well, you did a terrible job, because it looks horrible. And so that convinced me to shoot it. And Jim liked the idea. He liked the bravado of throwing something out of a helicopter. And what I didn't know at the time is I thought it was like, I don't really know how to do it, but we hired parachute guys, and they sewed the replica of the parachutes, and it worked like clockwork. I was up on in Catalina, I was up on the edge of a cliff, and I was photographing it. And even if I photographed it kind of sloppy, it still would look like a authentic newsreel type of thing. And the parachutes opened, and it was great. And I complimented the people who did it, and they said, we had no idea the parachutes would actually open. We thought it was just going to crash into the water. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me? Like, well, so I was completely confident. I thought everything was going to work, and they were like, oh my God, this is never going to work.
That's everyone does that in special effects, or experts. Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it, or don't tell me. But I was happy with the parachutes and the thing in the water.
Maybe we can talk about this.
Oh, yeah, well, this is, the interesting part about this is I use now Unreal, now the most modern way of previewing and seeing shots. But this is really, when I'm doing a replica of what we did for Titanic, I'm not a big storyboard fan, because sometimes they're fantasy drawn, where it's not a real lens. It looks cooler than that shot would ever be. So what Jim liked to do, this is a Jim Cameron thing, is get this little lipstick camera, go up to the ship and frame the shot, and then that framed shot would become the basis for the storyboards. And then when you did go to shoot it, it was very specific. It's a 20mm lens, and you could actually get that shot, that composition, and all that. So I was illustrating a point that this is the way we used to do previs. It was still frames and not in motion, because it was too jerky. But this is exactly what we did, and we had we recorded on VHS tape, and then this would be turned into a storyboard frame, and then so in a very short period of time we did like 300 or 400 storyboards based on the fact that we could very quickly frame a shot and do that, and then it looked kind of more handsome when the artist went in and painted over it. But that was the basis for my journey into using that to actually pre-visualize a camera move and a shot, and then cut it together and add music and sound effects and figure out what the scene might look like before I actually spend the time and money to shoot it for real.
So everyone recognized Titanic, which was your next film after Apollo 13.
The third film.
Third film, yeah, exactly. Third film, Titanic. Can you imagine? And first Oscar.
What's that?
First Oscar, Academy Award.
Yes. Well, you glossed over the fact that I lost an Oscar for Apollo 13.
Against whom?
A talking pig, Babe.
Which is a great film.
So thanks for torturing me all this time.
Phil Tippett told me that he was nominated for Starship Troopers when Titanic was going to win the Oscar. There was no debate about that. And during the evening, the Oscar evening, he had removed his shoes, and he was just waiting for you to win.
God bless him. Well, I mean, we don't know. I mean, we were favored to win for Apollo 13, and I'll give you the short story is that we had a lot of money. It was Universal, and Babe was a smaller little film, and so we were with the people. We went to the same parties and stuff, and we were always consoling the Babe people because they knew that they were going to lose because Apollo 13 was a big movie, made a lot of money, and Universal had big, brochures and all the kinds of stuff to sell, and they didn't have any. And every party was like, it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. We never know who's going to win, and we were confident that we were going to win. And then they called their name, and it was like, what happened? And then they didn't talk to me ever again. It was like all this comfort and telling everything's going to be great. They got their Oscar, and they took off, and
Reverman News?
What? Yes, it was with the news. So, so when Titanic came about, it's like, well, that's not in the bag. It's definitely we know what that feels like.
So I'm sorry for the quality of the next clip. I didn't find a better clip.
Are you going to find something else that impressed me, or?
But I found actually this.
Oh yeah.
We have sound on this.
Brake area. It's been pre-scored, and there's lead plating over on the side. And what we're featuring right now in this particular angle is the actual rip, where it actually separates and opens up the,
I was younger then.
the side of the ship. So this is probably going to end up being about like 1 second of screen time. But
you see how ridiculous it looks in person? And you have to have a lot of faith that when you're filming it and you hit the right angle and the right speed, it looks like something. But that's
we're checking
we
now.
did it
See if
for.
it looks good.
We're holding our breath.
Look at the suspense.
Oh, it look great. D camera look great. Let's see D camera. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's do it again. Put it back together again as best you can. No explosions. And just let it rip.
I didn't know what I was talking about. I just said stuff.
Fake
No,
it
it was,
till you make it.
that part was, I mean, although the movie was very difficult to do, that was a lot of fun to do because you get to do these big setups. We built a tank out in the middle of the desert, so because I couldn't get a stage big enough and tall enough to light it, and I needed a big black area, so I came up with this idea that we would shoot out in the middle of the desert at night, which was a really bad idea because it was freezing cold, and we had to shoot all night instead of shooting during the day in a wonderful, comfortable stage. But every night we'd go and set up these shots, and they were pretty incredible to see what it really looked like. And it was quite the movie to work on.
And what's interesting on Titanic is that James Cameron is really specific on what he wants.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, the nicest way. I'm trying to find a nice way to put it. When the water pours into the Titanic, when it breaks, he wanted you to be very specific about the science of how the water would react,
Yeah, he was telling me about, which I didn't know anything about. You saw what the miniature was, and the water just did what it did, and we're happy that it looked okay. And he was asking me about the laminar flow of the water, and it's like, excuse my French, but what the fuck is the laminar flow of the water? I mean, I don't even know what that is. And he told me the next 20 minutes the whole science and industry behind the surface tension of water and how it does. It's like, well, I don't know what to do with that. I could shoot it again if you like, but I don't know how to change the properties of water. So, but he's like a scientist, and he knows every little aspect of it. Not that I could do anything about it, but It took 20 minutes out of my day to tell me how it worked.
Yeah, and the idea is you have a miniature, we're going to break it, you're going to see what you get.
Yeah, you're going to get what you get, and I hope you like it.
Maybe we can watch a clip and talk after that, because we have talked about Titanic, but watching a clip from it is important.
That was the laminar flow shot.
This is incredible.
Well, thank
1997, seeing that was not usual, you know. We were not used to these images. How do you feel looking at this now? Do you want to improve anything?
Well, no, there's some things that you know, when you shoot models and you shoot it for real and you have real explosions and things like that, that it's hard to say that you could do it better, and probably not. And it's kind of a magic time when we did it, and we were sort of in the zone doing it. The peculiar thing about this is that we storyboarded a bunch of shots, but we didn't storyboard those. And while I was out there shooting it, it was like, I have to get this shot. It's too important not to get. And Jim is very specific, and he only really wanted me to do the shots that he dictated, but I shot them anyway, and he ended up using all of them. And it changed the tone of the sequence. The sequence was actually going to be the Lovejoy character going down the hole, and you sort of miss the whole moment when it breaks in half. And then because I shot all that stuff, he got rid of the Lovejoy moment and just used the largesse, because it's kind of an epic. And so I was really kind of happy about that. He wasn't too happy about it but then he used it, and that's why he's a genius filmmaker. Whatever the best thing is for the movie, he's going to do it, whether he designed it or not. So
So I have some photos.
This is pretty. Just bringing back some horrible memories, but I mean, this was like 7 days a week, 14, 18-hour days. You know, I was psychotic. You know, if you don't have any sleep for weeks and weeks and weeks, you get pretty crusty, and sometimes remarkably ill-tempered.
There's.
But it's an incredible project to work on, because just the visual components you have to work with are stunning. There's a moment where we were shooting in the tank, and I was in the water, and it's like, well, through the camera, there's only a few people in the world who've seen this site. It's us and the people who actually live through it, and it was pretty, you know, it gets kind of moving, actually.
So there's a lot of digital compositing, pretty groundbreaking stuff, and there's also all the digital doubles, which were quite new. Starship Troopers and Titanic were the first actually to do that. There's a crowd scene at the end of Starship Troopers when they take the brain bug out of the cave, and they cheer, and it's all digital doubles. And there's all the people on the Titanic, on the deck of the Titanic, and you had to shoot many things. Maybe
that was for the engine room.
Yeah, the engine room. I did some. I chose quite a few things to show, but yeah, this.
Oh yeah.
So you did motion capture to add all these elements.
Except for that guy.
Except for that guy. So you directed the motion capture sessions?
Yeah, I did. Well, first the TDs, or technical directors, directed them, and they just were satisfied with people just walking back and forth, and it wasn't specific enough. And so I wanted to, I went back and reshot it, and I gave them all sort of vignettes and things to do that the sum total of it would look natural. You know, somebody holding a baby and walking like that, and just looking and examining things. And so that when you looked at the totality of the shot, you were seeing things that looked remarkably similar to what you would imagine them doing. They're not just generically walking back and forth, because you need sort of every trick to convince the eye that it might be real. If the motion was realistic looking and it was something that you think you would do, like picking up your baby to look over the railing and see the thing, or being served tea, or moving your shawl up. And we also, because it was very crude at the time, and cloth simulation was very difficult to do, we had people in full costumes, and then we put the tracking markers on the costumes themselves so they would sway and move in a natural way. And at the time that we did it, no one really did motion capture to actually put humans in the scene. They used it for, you know,
video games,
a robot, and video games, you know, to power a robot, or a knight in a metal costume, or whatever else. But no one ever really used it to do people, and so that was fairly new at the time.
Even Terminator 2, there was no motion capture on this.
No, there was no motion capture. That was all animated or copied from live action.
Yeah. There's the $1 million shot.
It was $1 million shot, yes.
That literally $1 million.
It was literally $1 million.
To do it. So that's...
And we devised the shot so that we could actually photograph it. So mathematically, we figured out what we had to do by rotating them, and I had to rotate their light source, so that I could actually get the shot. Because back then, motion control was very crude, and it could only go at a certain speed, so it could never do that round move. So if we remove them, that it could go fairly fast and just do a move in and a move out. So that's what we came up with, and I photographed that in
the ocean is digital.
It's all digital. I mean, the whole idea of the digital water was I wanted to do these magic shots where you go from one state of the Titanic to the other, and to get one fluid shot where it magically sort of transitions, kind of what your brain would imagine you'd want to see if you saw the wreck of the ship. You kind of imagine what people would look like on the deck of the ship, and all of a sudden, as you're doing it, it's starting to change. So it's almost like you're cueing the effect. Well, I needed to have full control of the water, motion control of water, which doesn't exist, and the control of that ship and the wreck, and all do repeat moves on them all. My son is playing soccer with himself at the back of that ship, by the way.
How long did it take to do this? And to render?
That was, the rendering was crazy. It was, if I wanted to change one color on the deck of the ship, it would take 1 hour. You hit one button, and you have to wait an hour for the color to go through the entire chain of all the different things that were done in the composite to see. And then you go, oh, Jesus, that's too blue now. It's like, go back a little bit. So it would take hours and hours and hours to try to make it perfect. It was very difficult. And now there's more power in there's more storage in my phone and more power in my phone than the computers we had then.
You worked with Silicon Graphics?
With Silicon Graphics, we had about a half a terabyte of storage space for the whole facility. So every night a shot had to be dumped off on tape, and then the next morning brought back on tape so we'd make room for all the other shots that were being done. And my phone has half a terabyte of storage on it, but back then the entire studio had that. So.
And now to give an idea, Weta Digital, they have the facility. They have a building next to the facility for the storage, and they have a building to give power to the storage.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, now even when we did Lion King, sometimes it was 200 hours a frame to render all the hair and all the leaves and all the things in the scene that you need literally thousands of computers to compute it.
Let's do a flash forward because we have sinking ships.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this. Wolf of Wall Street by Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, this I didn't have any money, so this was a little bit. We used a company called Scanline, which their claim to fame is creating computer-generated water. And what this I was doing was incorporating what I like to do is create a simulation and not art direct the simulation, just put all the factors in there, and then I will find a way to photograph it as opposed to art direct. I want the wave to do this, and because all of a sudden it starts to look very phony very quickly. And this is something with now our modern technology, the modern water. I could do a better sequence than I did then, but I had very little money, so I had to pre-visit in like a day or two, and give them all the shots and all the various things, and then figure out hand operating the camera to get enough life into it to make it feel like it could be real. And I also used the idea that if I'm in another boat photographing it, I would be kind of fighting that I'm going down on a wave while the ship is going up on a wave, and that adds to the verisimilitude of the shot, where it doesn't look like you're in a tank just taking a perfect picture. This is one of my favorite shots to do. It was one of those things that just works out the way I wanted it to look, and all that. But this is, we had very little money to do this, way less than anything we had on Titanic, and try to make it's a semi-fantasy sequence. Even though I don't like fantasy, it's a little bit, like a dreamlike a little bit here, but it was fun to do at any rate.
You worked several times with Martin Scorsese. One of my favorite movies that you did, and one of my favorite movies ever, is Hugo. And Hugo has the best 3D ever. And so thank you, because
you're welcome.
That must have been tricky to do. Maybe I can show some behind the scenes and comparison on a shot. There's a lot of incredible tracking shots in this.
Well, this shot here was, we didn't want to do the idea of the same shot that Marty did in Goodfellas, but we also wanted to have what it felt like. And so the idea behind this shot was to figure out, if you're with the boy, this is where he lives, this is where he plays, this is his whole world. We want to be with him to experience what he experiences, which is very similar to the idea behind the Goodfellas shot. The Goodfellas shot was actually, they had one physical structure and they shot it. This was 5 different sets, 2 different boys, and it was shot over the entire length of the film, because the sets, I had to wait for the sets to be built for me to shoot the various pieces. So I had to figure out the shot in advance to also give the production designer, Dante Ferretti, the dimensions, because we wanted to see how long it would take him to run from point A to point B, and that's how big the set had to be to accommodate that, and put in the big wheel that he goes behind and all the various things. And I had to figure out how to shoot it, which was very difficult. So we built this crazy rig, which is the circular chute, because the camera was about this tall, and there's no way that I could do a Steadicam looking shot with that. So we built the chute spinning around, and the camera just goes straight down, so it doesn't have to do any of this fancy stuff. And the background spinning makes it look like the camera's following him down the thing, and I had it hand operated, so we kept in the same speed as the boy, literally sliding, so we just would be right behind him. And so it was a fun shot to do, and it was the danger was making it too referential to the Goodfellas shot, but yet still have the same import. And it was like the power of previs, of being able to figure it all out in advance, so I could shoot every element correctly. That's the stunt double, or the other kid, actually. And then it turns into, so that's the weird rig. Can you go back to that picture for a second?
I can try, if I find my mouse.
Yeah, stop it there. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
After that?
Yeah, it's okay. It's the green rig, the thing. I figured out how to shoot the shot, which is the crane with the spinning set, and the physical effects guy went to the producers to tell them that there's no way this could possibly work. And I put his name on the ticket, and he won an Academy Award, by the way. But so he never thanked me. But at any rate, that was the confidence level. And I said, well, I got a C+ in science, so I'm pretty sure it'll work. But he was convinced that there's no way you could ever possibly pull this shot off. And but that's the kind of the nature of the beast when you're a supervisor and you have to come up with ways of doing things, and ways that are doing things that have never been done before. And you have to have a certain amount of confidence, not arrogance, but confidence that you could pull it off. And a lot of it is study and figuring it out, and sleepless nights trying to make sure that he was incorrect, that it actually would work, because we spent a lot of money doing that. But that's part of the ritual of doing what I do for a living is sometimes you have to take a leap and hopefully it'll work out. And,
there's a great scene also
Oh,
recreating a famous train crash that happened in the 1930s.
Yeah, that was a ton of fun to do. I enjoyed it, and we were so over budget that they didn't want to do it at all. And they said if I could shoot this in one day, they would let me do it. And so I shot it in one day because I pre-vised it all, and I was the director and the cameraman, so I knew how to shoot all the various elements to do it, and I didn't have to talk to anybody because I didn't have to tell the cameraman how to do it, or I didn't have to tell the director how to do it. I just do it all myself, so I could shoot really quickly and get it to work. And Marty was really delighted with the scene and very, very happy about it. And the payoff is that famous photograph of the train coming out of the station. That is such an interesting photograph because it has a story that is asking you to figure out the story behind it. How did that happen? So it's automatically an intriguing shot. And part of my career of doing this sort of stuff is coming up with an image that is familiar enough and built into the structure of the shot. It's already engaging the audience because they already know the story. That the story is being told in front of them, and as opposed to trying to wow them with effects and all the rest of the stuff, as you do something that just the visual itself will tell you that it give you some emotional impact. But this is all the tests that were being done to make sure it turned exactly right, and that it would bend and twist when it came out like the photograph.
New Deal Studio did the miniatures, who worked with Christopher Nolan on Interstellar or other things.
They were a great company, and we used to do, since I used to do a lot of second unit stuff, while I was setting up this, I would shoot a bunch of the inserts of the robot drawing the pictures and all the various other things that, and so I take advantage of their set building skills to do non-visual effects work.
You know what, let's watch the clip of that scene, the finished scene.
Yeah, it was fun to do. That's a fond memory.
I'm sure.
I wish you started with this instead of Harry Potter.
Yeah, but we have more time to talk about this.
Isn't that a spectacular photograph, though? The real
incredible.
photograph. It's really something.
You like to destroy things?
Yes. At home, too.
Let's watch another proof of that.
Oh, we're going down!
This was fun to do, too.
I'm gonna try for the Wilshire Country Club, not tall, you read me?
Wilshire Country Club, copy that. Howard, reduce engines to 1,000.
This is the real location, too, by the way.
I'm not gonna make it by! God damn it!
Go a minute.
That's intense.
That was the interesting part. That is that I didn't have this movie didn't have a lot of money for effects, like a fraction of what we had on the other films, and there's no way that I could create a scene that would be as impressive as modern action movie scenes. Just didn't have the money and the flashy camera moves and all that. So I came up with a way of just we got the real photographs of what happened and just filled in the blanks. If he hit this house and then he hit that house, and this is what the crash looked like in the aftermath, it must have been the connective tissue must have been that, and then photograph it super simply so it didn't impress you with my camera moves or anything flashy. It's just sort of documenting what it was as if it really occurred, and I could put cameras on it and photograph it. So it's basically getting out of the way of the sequence, and hopefully the power of feeling like you're in the middle of the crash would be enough, instead of trying to impress you with, you know, a big Michael Bay kind of action movie sequence. And it's not really Marty's style either. So we did it like we forensically figured out what must have happened, and then only photographed that. Didn't embellish it, didn't try to make it do other things. And it's fairly close to what really occurred in terms of what the end of the at the end of the crash, what was left of his ship and things like that. And it was the first time I used previs where I could hand operate the camera, and that was the beginning of what we did for Avatar.
Exactly
so
what I wanted to talk about. So Avatar, you had actually, you were called by James Cameron.
No, actually I was not. I called him and said that I did this kind of cool sequence. What I did is I like to edit, so I had an Avid, and I had the pan and tilt. I wish I had the little clip to show you. It was me and one guy, that was it. And so I would hand operate the shot and then keep on shooting it and then go cut it together, try to get that rhythm I was telling you about. And Alfred Hitchcock often said that you could create the sensation of movement by editing, as opposed to, because I couldn't really do CG camera moves or anything like that, and I had to shoot miniatures, and you can't really, it didn't have rigs that would go fast enough to play it back when you overcrank the camera to do a fast move, so I had to basically photograph it fairly simply. And I would do it, and because I've never done a sequence like that before, I didn't have any experience, I didn't want to screw up a Martin Scorsese film being my first one. So I practiced. I shot and cut that scene 20 times. And the first time I did it, it was like, oh, that's terrible, and he's going to hate it, and let me do it again. Insecurity, that runs rampant here. And you do it again, it's like, well, it's not that bad. And then you keep on doing it, keep on doing it, keep on doing it. And then you go, well, this is actually a pretty clever way of working, that I could immediately fix my problems by cutting it in, not liking it, adding another shot, play with that, keep on going back and forth. And Jim Cameron likes to edit, he likes to shoot, obviously he's a great director. And I think he would really love it. And what I didn't have is the ability to handhold the camera, which I needed a motion capture stage to be able to track my camera moves and things like that, or do a crane shot live or any of that stuff. So I contacted him and said, I think you would really like what I was doing, and since he has a lot of money, if you invest in a motion capture stage, you can do this kind of cool stuff. And so he was very intrigued by it, and he was going to do a different movie called Battle Angel at the time, and he had all the artwork done and all that stuff, but he really wanted to do this movie that he wrote right at the time we did Titanic. So the conception of Avatar was that, and so I showed him how you would shoot a scene from Avatar, the Viper Wolf attack scene. I should have showed you that too, but I shot that, and I had my daughter in a suit, and she played the heroine, and a friend from her acting class was the other guy, and so I kludged it all together, and it was a pretty good-looking scene for what it was, and he really liked it and said, well, okay, I'm going to do Avatar then. And he invested in the stage like you see it there, and this way of shooting, which is I dubbed it virtual camera, because you're virtually using a camera, and then you could direct the actors live, and then the camera isn't really on the same stage as what it looks like. You could be 100 feet in the air, you could be 30 feet below you, and you're on the same stage as the actors, and you look through the eyepiece, and the eyepiece is where everything comes together, and the actor could be 2 feet in front of you, but in the picture he could be 1,000 feet away, but you're still able to direct every moment and make it all come together in a shot. So that's what we did, and he loved it. because then he could do any shot. We used to call it Jim Cameron capture, because he would capture the verve the way he likes to photograph things. And it made $2.8 billion. He didn't even send me a Christmas card.
He started working on this movie in 1995, actually. Scott Ross explained to me that Cameron talked with him and explained him, the plot. He wrote a treatment, and he wanted digital domain basically to do it for nothing, but the cost was going to be $400 million just for the VFX.
And we couldn't have done it anyway. I mean, it was not, the computer skills were not up to that level yet, and so it never would have worked, even if no matter how much money you spent, because it wasn't really ready. And then we had ILM do a template sequence, and then eventually Weta put all their resources together to create the technology. We came up with the face cams and all the various things to capture the faces, and it was pretty intricate what we came up with, and forced it into being. That's the other part of doing this kind of work, is the force of will of putting something together that has never been done before. You have to have confidence, not arrogance, to do it. You have to have confidence in yourself that you could solve the problem you don't know exists yet until you go through the journey. So you need all that, and somebody like a Jim Cameron or Bob Zemeckis or Martin Scorsese, they all have the same quality, which they're willing to take the big swing and hopefully have the confidence to know that they can beat it. But a lot of people can't do that. They're too afraid to make a mistake, but these guys are willing to put it all on the line and hopefully get it to work. And if it works, you have it's a grand slam. You get the big payoff for it.
We can, since we are in digital creatures, you did this, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, this was Jon Favreau. After I did Hugo, he was very impressed with Hugo, and he knew that I worked on and created the virtual camera system for Cameron, and he wanted to basically shoot this as an element shoot, that you shoot the kid on blue screen, and then we do all the rest of the stuff later. And of course, I wanted to previs it all, so I knew exactly how to shoot the blue screen shots, so that it wasn't. A lot of times what people do is they shoot a generic blue screen shot and they add what's called post-viz and add all the stuff afterwards. But it's never the shot you would have done if you knew what it was going to look like. So I needed to know what it looked like prior, so that the camera setup that we're doing would yield a result that felt like normal filmmaking. It felt like that was the choice you would have made if that was in front of you. And John was very good about allowing me to set up and pre-visualize the whole movie to figure out technically how to do like a shot like this, where we created that moving buck where he's sitting on it, and we pre-animated the bear, and they took the coordinates of the bear movement to move all the musculature, so it looks like he's really riding, and the G-forces are working on him. And so we got a chance to invent a couple of little things to enhance how you would photograph this sort of thing, and pave new ground and try something that's never really quite been done before. And every time you do it, you could always do it better than, because you're solving the problem and doing the film at the same time, or inventing the new technology. And so that's where Lion King came up, is that we did this, so we knew how to do that, and maybe the next film we could even improve on our way of filming it. Some of the stuff looks pretty okay.
There was a new wave of live-action versions of animated movies. Mm-hmm. So there was the live-action version of The Lion King, but it's still an animated movie.
That's controversial, but...
Yeah. What's your take on this?
Well, my take on it is, all filmmaking is illusionary, and to call it an animated movie puts a name on it that conjures up an animated movie. An animated movie would be the original cartoon, because you call that animation. So if you said, well, this is an animated film, you would say, well, that doesn't sound like it'd be a photoreal film that looks like you could have conventionally photographed it. And since we were not cartooning the animals, we made it look as perfectly natural as we could, and we didn't embellish their mouth or their eyes or any of the stuff or the way they move. We patterned after real animals. That to call it something that it really isn't was something that I didn't think was appropriate. So my take on it, it's a live action movie. It was shot as if it's a live action movie, forgetting that everything was animated, and the cameras aren't really animated. They're actually shot. We had a real dolly grip. We had a real camera assistant. We were able to pick and choose the lighting. That's Caleb Deschanel, one of the great cinematographers of all time. And we lit the movie as you would light a real film. And what time of day would you shoot this? You don't leave the sun up in every shot, even though you could, because that's not the way you shoot a real movie. Over the course of the day, the sun is moving, and you just choose the setup when the sun's in the right spot. And it's never in the same spot, but when you cut it together, you're used to seeing that in a live action movie. That's the only way you can photograph it. So we photographed it like it was absolutely live, absolutely like it was. We had the same confines as a regular feature film, as if we went to Africa and shot it with a 65mm camera and all that. So to me, I was only doing a live action movie. You could call it animated if you like, but you probably get
we can call it a photoreal version.
Yes, you could do that. Just don't call it
less controversial.
Yeah, well, but everybody,
yeah. No, but
I got a lot of
take that many people said, but it's animated, etc. So
yeah, I got a lot of grief from it. People were not too happy about it, but that was my point of view, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
We don't have much time left, unfortunately, but maybe we can end with something that you did in 2007 with Martin Scorsese. Which is commercial. Maybe we can give a context. It's like a mockumentary, a fake documentary, where Martin Scorsese finds 3.5 pages of an unfinished Hitchcock project that he could never film, and Martin Scorsese decides that he's going to shoot it the way Hitchcock would have shot it.
He's going to restore a film that's never been shot, which has never been done before.
So
do you want me to tell the story of how it came about?
Maybe, yeah.
The short version of it is this company, Frisione, hired Marty, and they wanted him to recreate his famous Steadicam shot in Goodfellas, and he thought that was too self-referential. He didn't really want to do that, so he wanted to do a Hitchcock thing, which was North by Northwest and The Birds and all the various little films, and we're going to build all those sets and shoot all the things on location. And it ended up, and at the meantime, it was a very short schedule. We started to build the Carnegie Hall portion, which was shot in Bayonne, New Jersey, which is quite a bit distance away from Carnegie Hall. And it was very crude. I don't know if you have the behind-the-scenes stuff, but at any rate, it was very crude. And that's all we had. And then the company that was financing the commercial called me up and said, "We are so over budget. Can you figure out a way of saving money?" And it's like, well, I can't, because I only have a couple of weeks to actually pull this off, so I can't stack it with a lot of effects, because I won't be able to finish it and get it in time. And Marty would lose his director's fee, by the way, if we were late. So, and they said, you have to try to come up with something. It's like, well, and I said, well, I know what we can do. We can make a movie about we don't have enough money to make a movie. Because then we have all the sets, Marty could improvise stuff, and Marty loved the idea. They hung up, and they called back and said, okay, Marty's got an idea that he would create fake 3 pages of a Hitchcock movie for the set that we could afford to build, and fill in the blanks with ad-libbing and showing us filming it and showing us editing it and all that stuff. So we created this alternate mockumentary of making this movie, which is very, very funny. It's really, really, and it won a Clio, of all things, and you see Marty at his best, where he can ad-lib and be the charming self he is.
So we don't have 10 minutes to show the whole thing, but I did a reel that
but you can see it online. It's worth seeing.
Undated. Yeah. 3.5 pages with another page missing in the middle here. Back in the theater, it says, see that? Yeah. Back in the theater, there's a page missing. We don't know what happened in between. Yes, these are pages from, and here's the best part. These are pages from a Hitchcock film.
They're pages from a Hitchcock film?
Yeah, but the thing is this, that for whatever reasons, this key from reserve was not made.
So you're no longer just going to imagine it. You're going.
No,
to,
we're going to do it.
You're going to do
We're
it.
going to do it. And action, guys.
All stills. Pretty stupid, I think. And all of Carnegie Hall was shot with a still camera. So we created called HDRs, and I was able to adjust all the lighting by burning and dodging various things to make it look like we lit it.
Sometimes, you know.
This is my favorite
I
shot.
hope so. I think sometimes even while I'm doing this, I think I kind of feel him looking over our shoulders, you know, looking over my shoulder anyway. And I mean, the only thing I hope is that he kind of takes it in the right spirit. You know what I mean? Yeah, it'd just be terrible, you know, if it was like, I just hope he understood the, you know, the fun of it in a way, right? The spirit, you know.
I'm sure he does.
I hope he does. I hope he does. Because, man, that comes out of love, you know. But a lot of things come out of love that are not necessarily that good.
So who's next? Weiler?
We could do the scene from Greed. Because they got the stills. They got the stills.
Yeah.
We could just, you know, but he features prominently in Game 5.
You can watch the full version.
Yeah, you should see the whole thing. It was really quite funny. But that end shot, because we had to now replace some of the shots that we were going to do with the birds, and we were sitting in Marty's office, and there was a building across the way that was low enough, and Marty said, "Well, how the hell?" Or actually said, "So, anyhow, how do we do the birds? What are we going to do with the birds? How are we going to do it? What would you do? I don't know. We don't have the money. What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, across the street, there's a building right there. Maybe I'll just do a pullback shot and add the birds in that one." Good. Okay, do that. Do that. We'll do that. And it was so much fun to do because it was that creative, that free form. And when I was shooting it, we did a 24-hour day, and I wasn't allowed to come back to shoot because of turnaround union issues until 4 o'clock, and it was winter in New York. So at 5:20, it was pitch black. So I only had a short time to do it. So I go to set up the shot, and I said, "Well, when do I pull back?" And they said, "When Marty laughs." It's like, well, I'm across the street. I have no idea when he's going to laugh. And they said, "Well, you have to fake it." And it was like, okay. And I never used that camera before. It's a sports lens that they use for soccer games and baseball games and things like that. And the first take, I just kind of hit the button when I thought he was going to laugh and pulled back. So I can't hear him either. And that was the first take was in the thing. We actually shot it twice. But by the time I could actually show him the shot to see if he even liked it, how fast I was pulling back, it was already pitch black, and that was the end of that. And that's the shot that's in the movie. And it was that fun to create these things on the fly and do. When you see it, I did some really goofy Alfred Hitchcock. You know, there was that very obvious visual effectsy looking stuff that the way they would have done it back in the day. And the cheesier it was, the more he loved it. You know, it was too much fun. It was like taking something that wasn't going to work at all and turning it into something that was a lot of fun to do, and took advantage of all of Marty's great, you know, acting skills and ad-libbing and editing skills and all that stuff. It was cool. The last little bit of story on that is, if you remember, the two birds that land at the end. So this is like literally 2 weeks from the moment we shot. I had to finish it all, so I had to figure out how to do all of the shots and get it done, and it had to be shipped to Spain and play in a movie theater, and if we didn't make the deadline, Marty wouldn't get paid, which you don't want to be in that situation. And he called me up because I sent all the shots to them there, and I was finishing it in my basement, editing the final piece to get the cassette. A guy came from the shipping company to my house to pick up the tape, and Marty said, so anyhow, what about the birds at the end? So what about the birds at the end? I mean, do you know that the guy's here? He goes, well, I'm a little disappointed. It'd be great if two birds like landed at the end. It's like, oh, and so I told the guy who came to pick up the tape that there's a taco stand down the road, and maybe you should go get a taco and wait a few minutes while I print in the two last birds, and I give him the tape, and he takes off. I send the shot to Marty. He goes, yep, that's it, birds, good. But that he's cool as a cucumber. He is unfazed by schedules, money, time, how difficult it is to do. He just doesn't care.
I think it's a good conclusion. I think we have time for one or two questions. I don't know.
Just not about Harry Potter, if you could.
Alors, est-ce que quelqu'un aurait une question? J'ai vu une main levée tout de suite là-bas.
She has her hand up there. This young lady over here?
Jean-Paul, juste à côté de toi, il y a quelqu'un qui... Ah. Oui.
Hello. My name is Anaïs. First, I wanted to thank you very much because I love all your work, and for you to be here, I mean, it means a lot. So I wanted to ask you, what or who inspired you to do what you're doing right now?
Actually, what inspired me to do it was when I was 16 years old. I'm a little older than most people here. When I was 16 years old, I saw The Godfather. And I've never seen a movie before. I used to love movies and all that, but I never saw a movie where it was like the definition of cinema, where every art form, acting, directing, music, lighting, all came together and made something that was art to me. And I just knew I wanted to do that. I didn't have any idea what that was. And my journey was to figure out what that was and see if I could ever get a job doing something like that. So that was the inspiration, where the sense of tone and a completed piece of work where all the art forms come together to create something that's magical, to me was the drive to do it. And I didn't necessarily get into visual effects for visual effects. I got into filmmaking, and so I applied my love of filmmaking to creating a visual effect that felt like it's part of the movie and it was the same tone and rhythm and things, so it didn't stand out as a specialized shot. It felt like hopefully felt like it fit into the fabric of the movie and recreate the Godfather experience for another person that I got when I saw it for the first time.
Temps pour une dernière question. Monsieur qui a levé la main comme un pistolero.
Hi. I just want to know, what is your relation in your work with a production designer?
It's pretty close. I got the chance to work with some great production designers. My very first one was Dante Ferretti, who also did Hugo and Shutter Island and a couple other movies. So it was very a warm trade-off where I could solve a problem that they had. They couldn't complete the art that they wanted to do because of money or space or time. And so it's very a warm relationship with the production designer. And I'm encouraging them to just dream big, and maybe I can fix it. Maybe I could get that shot that they wanted. And you build a miniature or do a matte painting or do something to increase their vision and not be hampered by the finances and the time schedules and things like that. So I try to be a partner if I can to them. And I've been blessed with working with some great production designers in my lifetime. Anybody else?
We have 1 minute, so yes. Une question?
Another one. Okay, sorry. What's your school cursus, before to go in the film industry?
What was the question? I studied, well, I went to school to study cinematography at Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara, and I just had normal liberal arts classes and things like that. But in the process of studying cinematography, I also would go to the opera, listen to music, study paintings and statues, and got interested in something that creates an emotion by just looking at it. You know, the composition of a painting and the way it was lit was intriguing to me, and I try to always figure out how I could possibly get that into whatever I was doing. And I was, you know, when I started, I was terrible. I mean, I just had no, you know, it took a while to figure out how to get something that was in my mind onto film to be something that other people might like too. When I first started, it was really not very handsome. But I would always continue to work hard and put in hours and hours and hours trying to, you know, get to something that would give me the emotion that I got when I sing, you know, other masterworks from people. So that was my background, sort of self-taught, I guess, in a way, if that answers your question.
Well, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
coming here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan.